A lot of the best builds in Nightreign tend to have some overlap with the relic perks. Like when it comes to making builds, there are the relic perks that are necessary to your build, and then there are relic perks that aren't necessary, but they're just good to have. And that's what I do want to cover today, like just the top 10 best relic perks so people do understand what relics that you should be looking out for. Now, being that it is just a top 10 and it is going to be very broad, as I will be taking into account every character, the character specific relics and just like very niche perks I will not be talking about. Just for an example, let's say that you made like a Madness build specifically for Libra, then a relic perk like Madness Resist Up is going to be great. Or for another example, let's just say that you have some of your best relic perks come with the curse, taking damage causes bleed buildup, and you have multiple of them, then all of a sudden your build might end up preferring something like Bleed Resist. But outside of those circumstances, these perks aren't going to really be that useful. Also, I am not going to be talking about any dormant power relics either, as they're also going to be very build specific. But yes, you can make a claim that dormant reapers can be like the best thing in the entire game for a handful of characters. But yes, for this video, it is just going to be based on Deep of Night, and do keep in mind that 99% of my playtime has been in Depth 5. Starting off at number 10, we have the damage up against status afflicted enemies, and this extends to poison, frost, and rot. Now, the reason why this perk I consider to be really good is because the damage that you can get out of this can be absurd. There are 3 different levels to this perk, and every single one can stack, assuming that it's not the exact same level. And the best thing is you can actually have multiple of these roll on the same relic. So if you manage to have all 3 poison and frostbite relics equipped, and have a build that can proc both frost and poison, you're going to be doing well over ×2 damage. So yes, for characters like the Executor or even the Iron Eye, these perks can be very good. Now, the obvious downside to these perks is that you have to have these enemies be afflicted with these status effects, and some enemies are just flat out immune or just really resist. And if you do fight these particular bosses, your entire build just falls apart. So even though it can be something that you can literally equip onto any character, like you can even play with somebody like the Guardian and start off with Chilling Mist and have all this frost damage up and actually make your damage be really good. But I'd rather spec into other damaging types of relics to where it's going to be more consistent against every type of boss and enemy, especially if it is something like frost, because if you are playing in trios, more likely than not you are going to have a teammate using fire damage and it's going to remove the frost. But in a solo run, it might be more preferable. Like my sorcery builds with the Duchess always has Hoarfrost Stomp and like these damage up against frostbitten enemies, but it's even a perk that you can benefit off even when you're not building around something in particular. Like let's just say you're looking at for a particular relic perk and it happens to come with something like damage up against rotted enemies +2. You should just always make sure that you're looking out for a Scarlet Rot weapon throughout your expedition, because it can offer you up to 20% more damage. Number 9, we have the damage negation relics, which for something like Deep of Night, you'd expect this to be a bit higher. With how hard enemies be hitting, stacking up on damage negation can be amazing. But unfortunately, it's kind of hard to stack up on damage negation. Like you can have 3 physical damage negation relics that all offer 12% more damage negation, which even then can still get you one shot with a lot of different characters. So this is definitely going to be a bit more niche of a relic perk, like maybe with higher HP characters like the Raider, and definitely the Guardian, specifically affinity damage negation, because you can block physical damage perfectly fine, but elemental damage is still going to go through, or affinity damage is still going to go through. So those perks are going to be more desirable for those types of characters. But when it does come to your damaging based characters, I wouldn't really bother much with the damage negation based stuff, because you can actually find much better damage negation weapon passives in the game itself. Number 8, we have successive attacks boosts attack power, which yes, did this recently get nerfed to where instead of having that 35% max damage that could last like minutes on end sometimes, it's only going to be that 20% damage and maybe only end up lasting like a few seconds after you do proc successive attacks, which honestly is still really good because these are the exact same values as the Thorny Cracks tier. So it's pretty much a perpetual Thorny Cracks tier, which is amazing. It's just no longer going to be that perk that you can slap on every single melee character and then just benefits. It's probably going to be more so for like very quick types weapons, like if you're building around daggers, or if you're using like these paired or power stance weapons. It could pair nicely with those. But another reason why I'm not going to really put this higher is because it's stuck on this one particular relic that is tied to the Undertaker Remembrance, which that in itself is part of the reason why I do consider the Undertaker to be the best power stancing character in the entire game. But for all other characters, it's going to make it very restrictive. Like if this relic perk was tied behind RNG and you can have it roll like on your regular relics, this thing could potentially be top 3. but unfortunately it's going to have to compete with other really good relic perks, and the potential for 20% more damage can be good, but in most cases it's not going to really come up as often. Like if you're just one-handing a katana, or using like larger weapons like great swords or great hammers, the 20% damage is not going to really come up as often, and you're more likely only going to be getting like a 10% damage boost. Number 7, we have the improved critical hits, which this does extend to your riposts and backstabs. There are 2 different versions. The +0 version is 18% and the +1 version is 21%. And both do stack together, but the +1 versions do not stack, but those are just tied to boss relics anyway. But the fact that these critical hit buffs do stack and can roll on your regular relics and your deep relics is going to make it be so powerful. And it actually can make for some of the best build in the entire game, but that is specifically for solo. Like if this was like a solo list, this would be like top 3 easily. But the fact that we are taking into account trios as well, I can't really put it any higher than this, because honestly, I don't really value critical hit builds in trios whatsoever. And that's for a few reasons. One is that enemies have a lot more poise, so you're much less likely to get a stance break, and you also can't be the one to guarantee to get the critical hit. Like the only time in trios where you probably might want to run critical hit build is against like the balancers if you're going to be parrying them. But otherwise, I would just save it for solo. But in solo, if you do have a way to stance break, which in most cases is going to be running dormant fists and then spamming charged heavy attacks, it can be doing some pretty ridiculous damage. But also, as of late, the Executor getting buffed to its character skill makes him also be one of the better pairings with this build, because deflecting does do good stance damage, and his weapon itself does have bonus crit damage. And the result can be pretty ridiculous sometimes. Number 6, improved initial standard attack. This relic perk right here has quickly made its way to be the best perk in the entire game for melee-based builds. Now, it's not going to compete with spell builds or like these skill spamming builds, but when it does come to a build that does not consume any FP, improved initial standard attack is the king. Because now, as of the recent update, it gets a 15% damage boost to your first light attack, which does extend to one-handed, two-handed, and power stancing light attacks. No, it does not count for running attacks, critical attacks, jumping attacks, nothing of the sort. So it is going to be a bit more restrictive in playstyle. But the reason why this is so good is because it can actually roll on your regular relics and your deep relics. And having all 6 stacked up together can be giving you over double damage. And this has been popularized with a lot of characters like the Raider and the Iron Eye, but honestly, I think this perk pairs best with the Wilder and the Undertaker. And the reason being is because I kind of value to have quicker types of movesets, especially in Deep of Night, and your DPS can just be higher too. So with a character like the Wilder, I do like to just two-hand weapon like an axe or a twin blade. You can just keep block canceling and just repeating the first light attack over and over again. And if you just do maintain this first light attack over and over, you're going to be getting amazing damage. You can also just have an off-handed weapon and just keep alternating back and forth to just maintain the initial standard attack. And you can do that exact same thing when power stancing as well, which I do think pairs best alongside the Undertaker, which, as I mentioned earlier with the Successive Attacks relic, it just synergizes perfectly with her because it does give her her best character relic perk too. And her character skill just pairs perfectly alongside these like higher stamina cost builds. And then paired alongside weapons that only have like a 3-hit light attack combo anyway, the initial standard attack is going to be coming up a lot more than you think. As number 5, I am going to touch on all the spell school boosting buffs. So every single relic perk that does boost a particular set of spells, which in the game is a 12% damage boost, I'm going to value those a lot. And for the main reason being that spell-based builds are just the highest damaging builds in the game. Spells hit very hard, and the spellcasters have amazing stats and lots of FP, so you can just spam these on end, and with how abundant Starlight Shards can be, your build can be broken in both solo and trios. And these perks have only gotten better since the DLC releasing due to the addition of those starting off with particular spells, which the Revenant has benefited the most of that because you can start off with things like Lightning Spear, Beast Claw, and O-Flame, and all those can get boosted by particular spell schools. And if you have 6 of these perks equipped, your damage is just ridiculous. But the single best thing about these spell school boosting relics is that they also can come in combination with damage up relics. So you can get something like improved Crystallian sorceries with +4 magic attack power, or Dragon Cult incantations with +4 lightning damage, which obviously is going to require some like pretty good RNG. But the fact that this can happen just makes these builds be even better. But yeah, the only reason why I'm not going to put them any higher is because it is strictly for the spell-based builds, and it is going to be restrictive to that particular spell as well. So you do have less freedoms if you end up finding some like amazing spells throughout your expedition. Number 4, we have the improved skill damage, which this is specific to the balancer relics. And this does boost the damage of your weapon skills by 15%, which isn't going to be much by any means. But what makes this especially good is that it can stack with itself. And there happens to be 2 balancer relics in the game that both have this perk. And on top of that, they also both come with melee attack power too. And the funny thing is about melee attack power is that it also does extend to weapon skills. For almost every single skill, there are like a few exceptions out there, but this pretty much just helps you get 20% more damage. And yes, melee attack power is a different relic, but being that skill attack power is exclusive to the balancer relic, I pretty much have to talk about them together. But since we're talking about the balancer relics anyway, the occasionally nullified attacks perk is arguably like a top 5 relic perk in this game. I only had 10 spots, but since I'm already talking about the balancer relic, I might as well just put it equally in line with skill attack power, because this thing can just help you to stay alive so much better than basically anything else in the game. So yes, having these 2 relics equipped can offer you over 40% more skill damage guaranteed. And with how much damage skills already do in this game, and with how FP efficient a lot of these tend to be, and now that dormant powers can roll on your deep relics and regular relics, it just makes a lot more weapon types and builds be viable in this game. And it kind of allows these like melee-based characters to have damage potential to be in line with the skill-based characters. But the trade-off being is that it might require a bit more RNG and FP management. But yeah, the only reason why I'm not going to put them any higher is because they are tied behind these boss relics and you can't roll them in every single relic. And like 15 to 20% damage is really good, but it is only just to like your one specific attack. However, these are actually rolled on your regular relics. Typically, if you're going to be getting these damage boosting relic perks that can offer like over 10% damage, they're always going to roll on your deep relics instead. At number 3, we have partial HP restoration on post-damaging attacks, which I do think this is the single best relic perk in the entire game for survivability. That is mainly with the melee characters. Spells and bows don't really proc this as well, and you can't really get your health back as easy. But the reason why I do value this so much is because it synergizes perfectly with the best damage negation weapon passives. As I mentioned earlier with the damage negation relics and how I don't really value them as much, because even though you can get close to 40% more damage negation, it's only really going to be to your physical damage. And that 40% is pretty much just as effective as like having like 1 damage negation at full HP, or like 1 successive attacks negate damage. You can pretty much almost always guarantee that you survive a hit. And partial HP restoration, Tweakiners always get back to full HP and then maintain these damage negation buffs. And even if you still end up taking like 80% of your damage, if you can still convert like 20% of that back to health, that means only 1 healing flask is going to put you back at full HP. Like, it just comes in clutch in so many circumstances. Almost every single melee build, I just recommend having partial HP restoration, especially a critical attack build and solo, because 1 critical hits can just like regen all of your health. But one thing to keep in mind is that only the +1 and +2 versions stack with themselves. The regular +0 version doesn't stack with either of them. So if you do want to make the most out of this relic perk, definitely try to have both +1 and +2, and don't worry about the +0, but at least just having one of them is always going to be great. Number 2, we have attack power up after defeating a Night Invader. Which, as I always talk about how I never run this perk and how I don't like to run this perk, but that is purely for reasons that have nothing to do with the power of this perk itself. This can easily be the single most important damaging relic in the entire game because it offers so much value for just 1 singular relic perk slot. Because every single time that you do kill a Night Invader, which is an NPC at these tornado events, you do gain a 7% damage boost, and it is always going to spawn in 2 of these tornadoes. So at the very least, you're always going to end up killing at least 2 NPCs for like over 15% more damage. And if you get lucky and be able to have 4 of them that you can kill, then you can be getting well over 30% more damage to all of your sources. Spells, weapons, your bare fists, it doesn't matter. It's just a permanent damage increase the second that you kill these enemies. Now, yes, the relic perk itself doesn't stack, but it doesn't need to, because having over 30% more damage at all times just by having this 1 perk equipped, it's kind of just ridiculous. And the fact that it is almost guaranteed as well for every single Deep of Night expedition just makes it be even better. Now, the reasons why I'm not going to put it at number 1 despite it being so dominant is because it is going to have some amount of RNG, like the circle can just completely screw you over and you might not have the chance to do these points of interest. You could actually get the new map as well, which a lot of people tend to just avoid the tornadoes with the new map, so it's not really going to be as good there. And also in solo, I never even bother going to tornadoes because killing NPCs by yourself is a complete pain in the ass. And I only really do them when I end up getting like overpowered. But yeah, when it does come to value in one relic perk, it doesn't get better than this one. Now, just for some honorable mentions that I do want to give a shout out to, one is stamina recovery on attacks. This one is just flawless quality of life. If it does come in combination with some of the things that I'm looking for, always going to be great, never going to say no. Especially if I am going to build around like power stancing types of weapons, because hitting with both weapons at once and the higher stamina cost, it just works out a lot better. Also, I want to talk about reduced FP consumption. This one I do consider to be like the best FP related perk in the game, because it works for every character. Because a lot of the other FP boosting perks, like 3 or more steals or staves equipped, is going to be more RNG heavy. Same thing with the rises as well. And the rises are percentage based, so they're only going to work well with characters that already have lots of mind. But for the characters that don't have much mind, it's not going to work that well. But something like reduced FP consumption definitely can. And with the rise of all these like skill spamming builds, it can just be a lot better. Obviously, we have to talk about health boosting items like increased vigor or increased maximum HP. Honestly, even like the increased flask restoration is really good. I don't think it's really that necessary to every single build. It's still going to be more niche in terms of stacking up on lots of health. Because even if you do stack up on lots of health with these lower HP characters, it's not going to stop you from getting one-shots. I do think damage negation is more important in that area, but you can never complain about more health or better healing. And the last perk I want to talk about is the invisibility on nearby frost. This one unfortunately is tied behind a boss relic, so it might be somewhat restrictive. And it's kind of more preferable in solo as well, because it's having the ability to break aggro mid-fight is always fantastic, especially if you are like killing ganks of enemies. So if you are ever struggling in solo play, I recommend running this relic with something like Hoarfrost Stomp, because it can help you clear with trash mobs a lot easier. Okay, this is me from the future. I already made the video, but I completely forgot to talk about defeating enemies gives you more ult regen, which is like one of the best perks in the entire game. You can get your ultimate back so quickly, which for certain characters can just be a godsend. It definitely should be in the top 10. Not sure where I would have put it, but it definitely deserves to be there. But at number 1, we have just all the damage up relics. Like, it's a lazy pick, but it basically has to be the case. Now, my philosophy when it does come to build creation in this game is your relic perks are meant for damage, and then your weapon passives in-game, you try and want to prioritize having some damage negation. Because if you compare the damage negation relics with some of like the damage negation weapon passives like successive attacks and damage negation at full HP, it's not even close. Like even the powers that you can get in-game. Like every single time, physical damage negation or affinity damage negation drops at 12%, but when it comes to physical damage or affinity damage, it's only 6%. Where if you look at the relics, +4 physical attack up or like +4 magic attack up is 12% more damage. And every single one of these can stack. You can have nothing but magic attack up perks and play someone like the Recluse and just have a broken build. Same thing could be applied to the Duchess too. If you're going to be using characters that tends to use more physical damage, which is like most of them, like an Iron Eye bow build, they execute it with his character skill or even his starting katana. Even just speccing into physical attack in general is just always going to be good. Because even if you do find split damaging weapons, they're still mainly going to be doing physical damage. But with the rise of these skill-based builds, the affinity damage booster is going to look more desirable. Because some of the best skill spamming options tend to be like elemental projectile attacks, like the Halo Scythe or the Black Knife, Glintstone Chris, the Moonveil, and is going into affinity attack up and running dormant powers to try and find these particular weapons, it can just be broken. Also, the added affinity damage perk can pair nicely with this build too, although that perk is only specific to a couple of relics in the game. And also, as I mentioned earlier with the spell school boosting stuff, like these can actually all stack together. So you can have like improved bestial incantations with physical attack up +4 and have like the most broken build in the entire game. Anyway, that is the video now done and complete. If I did miss anything somehow, please just let me know down in the comments below. And also please do follow me on Twitch, because I'm live there every single day. And do join the Discord too, if you do want to keep up to date with all the new stuff that's happening with the channel. Or if you do want to play some co-op with other Discord members because you hate playing with randoms, the link will just be down below. Anyway, catch you guys around. See yous.